All right. So let's wrap up the Wikipedia series with a look at one of the most dangerous aspects of Wikipedia, and that is the fact that some of the articles and references on Wikipedia can be extremely unreliable. Okay, and the reason for this is that Wikipedia is put together by volunteers, and in general, that leads to some very thorough explanations across a wide variety of topics. Okay, Wikipedia is one of the best encyclopedic sources out there. But one reason that you absolutely should not be using Wikipedia as a source in your papers is that each individual section of Wikipedia is written by a volunteer, and so they are not necessarily vetted. Okay, so again, we're here looking at the 82nd Airborne. Okay, and as I mentioned in the prior video, the 82nd is a very well-known military unit, historically very, very important. They played key roles in World War I, World War II, up through the present day. Okay. And so, as I mentioned before, very long um, table of contents for this article. And because of that, there are a huge number of sources listed here. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the notes. And in the notes, I'm going to show you two very different types of sources. Okay. Now, the first one I'd like to point out is down here, global security. Okay. And here it's listed as, 82nd Airborne Division history, which if I was going to write an essay on the 82nd Airborne, I would need to know something about the history. And I would need to know, is this a good source? And so if we go to this source, and I've heard of global security, I don't know a lot about their organization, but I have been to their website a few times in the past. And, when I go to their site, the first thing I see is, I'm going to just kind of scroll through, and I'm seeing quite a bit of information here. Okay. And so on the surface, this looks like a good website. This looks like a reliable website. However, to double check that, I actually looked them up on Wikipedia. And this is one of the aspects of Wikipedia that's actually very useful, is looking up your sources to find out how reliable they are. All right, now, right off the bat, it says globalsecurity.org, nonpartisan, independent, nonprofit organization, serves as a think tank, research, consultancy group. That all sounds very good. However, something I want to point out is that because of the way Wikipedia is set up, someone from Global Security could have written this entire paragraph. Okay? And so what you want to do is look for what other information is available. Okay? Now, when I was scrolling down, let me get this out of the way. All right. Now, this right here is very interesting. All right, Bob Woodward called the website an invaluable resource on military, intelligence, and national security matters. Now, Bob Woodward is an extremely reliable source. He's one of the journalists who actually broke the Watergate scandal before President Nixon resigned. And so, in terms of reliability, he is one of those gold standard sources. All right, so if we scroll down, I'm going to double check that that's actually from Bob Woodward. All right, and it's from his book Plan of Attack. So, global security, fairly reliable source from what I can gather here. Now, let's take a look at another source for comparison. All right, up here, there's a source from southfront.org. Okay, And it's talking about U.S. deploys elite airborne division near Mosul. So Mosul in Iraq. Now, I have never heard of southfront.org. And when I took a look at their website, um, again, it's a website I've never seen before. I'm not familiar with it. And that for me was troubling because I have actually over the years read a fair amount about the military, and I've Googled paratroopers before, and they've got this pop-up ad right here. They've got South Front critically needs your help, uh, and you know, even though the article looks reliable on the surface, it is factually stating, or in a factual tone indicating, Pentagon sends 1,700 soldiers. This looks like a basic news story. But I went ahead and Googled it, and I found some conflicting reports on them. Okay, so first, there was someone on Reddit asking, is this Russian propaganda? Um, and when I went on Wikipedia to try finding out, what is South Front about, Wikipedia does not have an article on South Front. Okay. All right. So let me make sure that I entered this right. Okay. And again, South Front does not exist. Okay. So it doesn't look like they have anything about this particular organization. And it turns out that they had a Wikipedia page at one point, but it was removed, as we find from this page, Wikispooks. Now, I do not know whether or not Wikispooks is reliable. Okay. From some of the things they write, I do not think they are. I get the indication that they're not reliable. But they do provide some information that is useful. Okay. So here they're saying fake news allegation by corporate media. Okay. So it appears that there's a journalist who was critiquing South Front as a Kremlin-backed propaganda tool. Okay, so that right there seems to back up what I saw on Reddit. Removal from Wikipedia. Okay, Wikipedia's South Front page was proposed for deletion. Okay, and then was deleted. So this page here, because they're bringing up fake news allegations and they are, this term corporate media, anyone who's using a blanket term to address all media sources tends to be unreliable because each individual source will be very different. Okay. So this source, Wikispooks.com strikes me as an unreliable source, but their information about South Front, I don't believe they're lying. All right. And in fact, their information indicates to me that South Front is not a reliable source. And so what we're looking at is that this source is something that I would avoid using myself. But on the other hand, if you did have the chance and you did dive a little deeper into what these sources are doing, you could compare South Front to to global security, and see the different types of ways that they are talking about the 82nd Airborne, and that can provide an interesting media study. But it is important that we know the differences between these sources, because if you are talking about the 82nd and you use an unreliable source, then you could be sharing information that is either mistaken or exaggerated or is simply not very well researched. Now, this is actually another reason why I recommend uh, researching a topic that you personally care about. Because in general, if you care about a topic, you will know uh, some of the myths surrounding the topic. So, for example, with the 82nd, I know who some of the commanding generals were in the past, and I know what it feels like to jump out of an aircraft, and I can, tell you some of the cadences we used to sing, and I also know some of the rumors about the 82nd that aren't true. And so if I was going to research this and write a paper about it, I have this baseline information which can help me kind of sort through the BS. South Front, the only reason I thought to Google that organization to check reliability is because I had never seen it before. And for someone like me who was in the military and who writes military sci-fi, when I find a military website that I have never heard of, I immediately want to double check it to make sure that it is going to be one that I can depend on. Okay, and in this case, it turned out that that website uh, is likely unreliable. All right, is it Kremlin propaganda? I don't know, but I would not use, if I was going to use that source, regardless of how reliable it is, I would need to address the fact that there are people accusing it of being Kremlin propaganda, and I would need to come to my own conclusions about whether or not it is. Okay? So if I was doing an article just about the 82nd, I would probably not use that source. If, on the other hand, I was going to look at how the 82nd Airborne is portrayed in the media, I could certainly use that source and talk about the possibility that Russia is creating fake news about the 82nd Airborne, and you know from looking at that article, it's clear that the article itself is using a photo from the 82nd. It's easy to tell that these are U.S. Army Airborne paratroopers, and I can tell that by the berets. I can tell that by the uniforms and the weapons they are carrying. And so clearly this article is designed to look reliable. And so if I wanted to talk about how propaganda works, I could talk about strategies that someone may use to make something look like news. Okay. But again, I'm not going to draw conclusions just yet because I have not done an in-depth research analysis about southfront.org. Okay. Um, but it is important for you to realize that the nature of Wikipedia does allow for extremely unreliable sources to be positioned as reliable. Because anyone can go on Wikipedia and add their own source. And anyone can I could write a website and then take my website and cite it on Wikipedia and treat that website as if it's a reliable source. And people reading Wikipedia may be lured into thinking it's reliable, even though I just wrote it up and threw it up there. Now, the Wikipedia editors, they do tend to remove citations like that. They do tend to keep things cleaned up. But that does not mean they always succeed. Okay? So with that, this was a bit of a longer video. I hope it proves helpful. This wraps up the discussion about how Wikipedia can be useful in your research. And with that, let me know in case of questions.